Subaru took a nosedive at the end of 2025, but it wasn't just them. If you missed my Honda update, Honda slid at the end of the year as well. And they were down overall. Check this out. Subaru is down almost 4% year over year. But we're going to break this down and not just compare it to last year. I brought up all the sales numbers of years past to see how it really, if we zoom out, what it really looks like for Subaru. Are they in trouble, or is this actually, are they actually in a good place? We're going to talk about Subaru in depth today, what's coming for them in terms of product this year as well, which I'm actually pretty excited for, to be honest. But I wanted to share this real quick. This is a little comedy to start our video off today. In Germany, the government has turned off, without really telling you and letting you know, that your remote start on your gas and hybrid powered Toyota and Lexus vehicles has been completely removed because, well, you're polluting if you remote start. So you're going to have to get your butt out of the house and wipe off the car and turn it on the old-fashioned way instead of remote starting, because the government considers this as unnecessary running of the engine or an avoidable exhaust gas pollution, which is not legal. You cannot do that. You're an evil person if you do this. This is not known to many users, meaning you've been paying for this feature. Maybe you got it free with when you bought the car. And Toyota, in order to protect the vehicle user from fines, yes, the government will fine you if they find you running your car with the not you in it. Okay, I would say over my dead body, but they have also deactivated the function on these vehicles. Now, if you have a plug-in hybrid and EV, well, for sure, you can precondition your car, make sure the cabin's nice and warm, melt the ice on the outside, because you're not burning any fuel and creating exhaust fumes. Wow, I am so happy I live in America because, well, no place is perfect, but man, things like that would drive me crazy. Would that tick you off if you can't use your remote start on your car because the government says you can't? They just do it over the air update and say, you need to freeze. You cannot run your car. You need to suffer because the environment is suffering. So let's get into Subaru sales. Did not have a rosy end of the year. The Crosstrek has maintained its top seller position and its best year ever. I think that's just indicative of people needing more affordable cars right now. And let's get straight into the sales figures here. And things are going to potentially get a bit tricky for Subaru, and I'll explain why, but they have their work cut out for them in 2026. Okay. The benefit, though, is that they finally have hybrids on the market, so they can fill that niche. However, their hybrids are overpriced and not very efficient compared to the competition. They have mechanical all-wheel drive. I need to test them, honestly. I need to test them so I can talk more definitively about Subaru hybrids, but they're going to be, it's great to have that finally in their lineups. Okay. I was driving behind the Subaru Ascent yesterday. I'm like, man, this is the most forgettable car in the segment. This is the first time I've ever seen it in a positive. It had a positive month of December, but it was still down 21% on the year. This car is a failure for them. They do have a 3-row EV coming. Don't know what it's going to be called. Maybe they'll just replace the Ascent with it. I don't know. But the 3-row EV will be built at Toyota's plant in Kentucky alongside the new Highlander. Yeah, maybe they just call it the Ascent or the Ascent EV. I don't know. But that vehicle is coming, and it will be better than the Ascent. No CVTs involved. I know it's fully electric, and some people don't want that. But hey, electric can be done well. And it won't be hard to be better than the Ascent because it's probably the worst vehicle in its class, or it's just hanging out at the bottom. It's not doing anything to help itself out, and it never has. It's never gotten really impressive updates. It's still, like I mentioned, CVT, lag fast. BRZ, this vehicle's still around. How much longer? It's maybe for a couple more years. Toyota is seemingly moving beyond Subaru with the next generation GR86 development and maybe teaming up with Mazda. Okay, so this car, it's just kind of awkward in Subaru's lineup. It's Crosstrek. This is the big seller for them, but it had a bad month. Well, I wouldn't say a bad month, but it didn't have a great month. It was down versus 2024, December, but it was up 5.5% in the year. Now, if you look at these numbers, this is what's crazy. The only vehicle that is not discontinued but had a positive year is the Crosstrek. The Legacy had a positive year, but that vehicle's canceled, and people are just, maybe they got good deals and they're trying to snap it up to have the last of the Legacies. But yeah, the Crosstrek sold 191,000 units this past year, which in previous history, it's been pretty close with the Forester and the Outback, but I think the Outback's Well, we had the redesign on it. That didn't help sales, I think, because you had a switch over in production. I think that's the big issue here. But typically the Forester and the Outback are pretty close, and even the Crosstrek. Sometimes they take turns on which is the best-selling vehicle, but the Crosstrek has pulled away. The Forester in easily second place now, and the Outback is potentially losing its big-time sales. Well, at least relative to what it has been in the past. All right, but let's move on to the Forester. The Forester had a rough month, down 10%, up, it's about neutral in the year, but down 10% on the month. Where is this a trend we're going to continue to see? It's hard to say. Like, we know there's been chip shortages for many manufacturers, especially Honda, a little bit Nissan with the Nexperia stuff. But I'm not seeing anything in here of Subaru mentioning why their sales were down for certain models so much in the month of December. The Subaru Impreza down 42%. Holy smokes. Why is this vehicle down? Well, it shares a lot with the Crosstrek, and the Crosstrek is selling well. So maybe they're just apportioning some of that production volume to the Crosstrek. That would be my guess. But the Impreza down 11% on the year, down 42% on the month. Could we be living in a near future, or could we see in the near future anyways, the Impreza be completely discontinued? It would be a shame right after the Legacy, but these sales, this drop in sales volume is crazy. And if you guys have an understanding why the sales volume has dropped so much on the Impreza, let me know. Maybe it's because the Impreza buyers were like, hey, I'm just going to buy a Legacy instead because, well, it's maybe a better deal in the current market. They did this like a fire sale to get rid of Legacies. I'm not quite sure. Don't know what's going on, but the Legacy actually outsold the Impreza in the month of December. The Legacy overall had a great year. It's final year. Now, are there still some Legacies out there? Probably. Not very many. Only 37 left within 150 miles of where I live. Things are still fairly expensive. 40 grand. Who's paying 40 grand for a Legacy? I would really like to know that. All right, but 30 grand, just give me a Camry and I'll be getting, 60 miles per gallon on a Camry LE. So it's just not price competitive or performance competitive. I would say lowest price, okay, you see some 23, 24,000, but again, unless you need all-wheel drive, which no one does really in Florida. But yeah, 28, you're seeing most of them around 28, 29, 30K for the base or for the lowest model trim. And it's just not price competitive at that point. So Outback. Now, the Outback Hybrid's not out yet. I think the Outback Wilderness is there. I haven't tested the new Outback. Haven't tested any, unfortunately, and I've been wanting to. I just haven't got them in my press fleet sent to me yet, and it is driving me a bit mad. But I haven't reviewed a Subaru in over a year. Like I'm literally going a little stir crazy, not reviewing their newest products. But maybe I'm not missing much. I don't know. Subaru Outback down 6.5% on the year. Again, when you switch over from old model to new model, you're going to have a drop in sales volume most of the time. Down 1% on the month. Pretty good month, though, for the Outback. The Solterra. Why is this down so much? Well, it's a double whammy. They switched over to the new model, sort of. I'll explain it a little bit. It's built by Toyota over at the Motomachi plant in Japan, and they're dependent on Toyota supplying these things, and Toyota hasn't been able to supply these next-gen e-axles and e-motors at a high scale yet, and sales have just fallen off a cliff as well with the lack of EV tax credit. Now, if we look on the market right now, there's some of the new Solterras are out there. Okay, let me see what the cheapest Solterra is, at least what they're advertising at right now. Keep in mind the Solterra is all-wheel drive only, if I remember correctly. And so we have 40 grand prices on these things, 43, 40, Look what you can get for a BZ. I think the BZ, I think they both look interesting, I'll say that. But the BZ typically looks better now, now that it's been redesigned. And you can get these BZs for the low 30s, okay, about $33,000 discounts. And I know it's front-wheel drive, but again, not everyone needs all-wheel drive. And even a front-wheel drive is still pretty quick, about as quick as a RAV4 hybrid all-wheel drive. Okay, so, it's again, Subaru is just seemingly always a little bit more expensive than they need to be. And we'll talk about how they're going to fix that on the EV front here fairly shortly. Okay. So the Solterra, the volume will jump back up. How much? I don't know, because they have more EVs coming and the Solterra is priced quite high compared to the BZ counterpart. And the WRX, this has just been a bloodbath. You know, Subaru has neglected seemingly performance cars altogether. You know what I'm saying? Currently, they still have BRZ and WRX. There's no STI. And their new EVs coming out, of course, are going to be faster. But like if you drive in WRX, it feels like a 20-year-old car. That's just me. Like it's very raw feeling. And some people love that. But it's not very refined. The gearbox is a workout, not meaning the clutch is stiff or you have to push the gears hard, but it's hard to rev match in that thing. It's a very like high skill level manual transmission car to drive. Okay. And it's let's say high learning curve. And for most people, it's just not very smooth of an experience. Even I've been driving manuals for a long time, and even the WRX, it's one of the more difficult manual transmissions to drive smoothly. It doesn't launch hard. It's not that great. There's a lot of slower cars I'd rather have that are just more enjoyable to drive. Actually, I think driving the BRZ is more enjoyable than the WRX, but maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm a little crazy. Okay, but the sales are not good on it. You know, they haven't been giving the WRX the treatment it needs, I would say, in order to sell as well as it has in the past, but it is what it is. What are you going to do here? Okay, it's a shrinking segment, and at least they still have it. But the WRX is also used to be able to get these for the low 30,000s. And now look how expensive these things are. Okay, upper 30s. A few years ago, when they were producing more, they're purposely reducing production volume so they can maintain high margins on these cars. I'm almost sure of that. But yeah, these things, I remember seeing them for like 32,000 just a couple of years ago. Even like then it was a great buy. Now 37K, 38K, it's a tougher sell in my opinion. Okay, there's so much more fun cars out there for the money. All right, so anyways, let's go back to Subaru. Overall, down 7% on the month, down 3.5% on the year. What do they have coming to make things more interesting? Well, EV that could help out the Solterra, because the Solterra is all-wheel drive only. Ironically, the new Uncharted, which is the same thing as Toyota's CHR, it starts at $35K. You can get them with dual motor all-wheel drive. There'll be little pocket rockets, but you can get them in front-wheel drive, and that's going to allow you to get into the Subaru EV ecosystem for less money with 221 horsepower, 300 miles plus of range. All right. But I'm going to drive this vehicle eventually, whether it's the Subaru version or the Toyota CHR version. What I'm more excited for is their new Trail Seeker for not that much more money. Okay. We're talking front wheel drive, this really small car for $35K, or you can get a large 4x4 super fast wagon for just $4 or $5 grand more. To me, it's a complete no-brainer. 375 horsepower versus 221 horsepower costs $5 grand more, and you have way more utility. I get it if you need to park in a small space, but yeah, there's no way I'd ever pick the CHR or the the Uncharted when the new BZ Woodland and the new Subaru Trail Seeker are coming out. Heck, I wouldn't even purchase the new BZ or the new Solterra, meaning refreshed, because this vehicle is here and it doesn't cost that much more. So it seems like what Toyota and Subaru are doing with their new EVs are saying, hey, you can buy a new EV from us in multiple different formats, whether it's a wagon, Forester size, or RAV4 size in the middle segment. And then you could also have a small one. They're all going to cost you the same, but which one fits your lifestyle the best? And I think I really do think the Subaru Trail Seeker and this BZ Woodland are going to be very successful EVs. How many EV wagons are out there? Not how many wagons are out there. I think you're just going to get a lot of wagon lovers jumping in maybe to the first EV here because it's fast, has great utility, good range, and decent enough charging. Okay. And like I said, it's priced really, really attractively, their wagon. So Subaru, I think, is going to have a good year. They will also release their new three-row, well, not release, possibly release, but debut their new three-row EV by the end of the year. Again, you got to keep in mind, they're not really going to have any advantage over Toyota's EVs. And in fact, I think Toyota's EVs look better. Subaru and Toyota have the same EV, just styled a little bit different. The interiors are roughly the same. The pricing, the packaging is a little bit different, but really it's just like, which one do you like the looks of more, and just go get that one. In the case of the Toyota, like the Toyota BZ versus the Solterra, like you can get in front wheel drive for a lot less money. Okay, where Subaru forces you into all-wheel drive. And I forgot to mention Subaru's overall sales. I know I'm back and forth a little bit, but Subaru sales, they sold about 643,000 in 2025. Not as much as last year, which might have been an all-time record. Let me double check. Last year, no, it was close. All-time record was 2018 at 680,000, but they sold 643, which was the most going back to like the like the late 2010s. Okay, so they had about their fourth best year ever in 2025. So Subaru's done well to kind of maintain that. I don't think they're ever going to get to like 1 million vehicles here in the US. I think they plateaued around like the most they can get. Okay, there's 700,000. They hit that in 2019. Sorry. Okay, so they had a top five year of all time. Okay, 643,000. That's a good year for them. But is 2026, what is it like with tariffs for a full year now in 2026? What is that going to bring for them? They're probably going to be falling even lower. But I think Subaru will be happy as long as they can maintain well over 600,000 units. I think that's a healthy number for them to maintain. I don't know if they'll be able to hit 700,000 anytime in the near future. Oh, one last thing. This is, I have a lot of Canadian viewers here. Premier up in Canada, Carney, is striking a deal with China. There's going to be tens of thousands of Chinese EVs, about 50,000 roughly, that are going to be coming into the Canadian market each year. This is just the beginning. Mark my words, okay? But at a 6.1% tariff, very low tariff. And China gets a few things in return. China's dropping duties on some Canadian exports like canola meal, lobsters, crabs, and peas. So, this is great, I guess. This is good news for China and for Canada. I don't really have a thought about it. I don't care, but I think it's big news because, well, just across the border to the north, you're going to be able to get some cool Chinese EVs. How they're going to set up dealerships, remember the volume's low, like 50,000 vehicles is roughly like 3% of the Canadian car market or yearly car market. So it's really low volume. And when I think, hey, a lot of these people are going to pay high price for these Chinese EVs because it's kind of like that forbidden fruit that they can finally have. The volume's low enough to where they're not going to be oversupplied. It's going to be interesting. So I'll see you guys in tomorrow's update. And I do car reviews. I have an Ioniq 9 outside, which I just did my first ever cold weather testing. Yeah, it was about 40 degrees here. I know it's not super cold, but that's really cold for Southwest Florida. So I was able to see how inefficient EVs are in the cold, especially the Ioniq 9. Oh, man. Yeah. Anyways, have a lot of thoughts about that. So thank you for watching. Have a great day and peace.